Wow, you guys missed some argy-bargy last night on my Twitter stream. It was after midnight. Everybody knows nothing good happens after midnight. So anyway, I'm just sitting there minding my own business. I forget what I was watching on TV. I think I was actually working on an article or two. And all of a sudden, into my Twitter stream comes something from Mr. Blue Check himself, Tim Jacob Wise. Does that name ring a bell? So Tim Wise is the go-to white guy to talk about black victimization and white racism in America. He's written a lot of books on it. He got a degree in political science. I think it was at Tulane. After that, he started working on an organization, an anti-racism organization specifically designed to defeat David Duke when he ran for statewide office in Louisiana. After that, he kept climbing up this anti-racism bureaucracy, worked for this group, trained by that group. Next thing you know, he's writing books. He does a lot of public speaking in a lot of schools. It's amazing how much of this institutional liberal denial, deceit, and delusion is publicly funded on one level or another. So lots and lots of guys, not exactly like Tim Wise, but they're out there doing this, doing the circuit. He's got his own speaking agency, that puts him into these places. There's never a conservative there holding up a sign going, "Tim Wise, you're a bad person. You're perpetuating the greatest lie of our lifetime, the hoax of black victimization." So anyway, the way it works in Twitter and all these other platforms is when one of our viewers, one of our allies, when they see somebody like a Tim Wise saying some crazy stuff, people will go, "Hey, Tim, you ought to start watching Colin Flaherty videos because he pretty much contradicts with facts everything you say with fantasy." So here comes, thus replieth Mr. Tim Wise, the famous Mr. Tim Wise of CNN, MSNBC, documentaries, the whole thing. "Flaherty is a fraud. If the links in his book don't work or are not verifiable, he's a hack." And he goes on to describe, "People of color are disproportionately affected by the war on drugs. Despite equal rates of drug use, possession, and dealing, right-wingers also can't read the NCVS reports. I've rebutted all this before in my essays." So I think that's when you refer to obscure things like NCVS reports by initial only, that's supposed to kind of like scare off anybody to come at them, right? Well, I've been using those reports for a long time. These reports are pretty good for some things. They're pretty good to explain why a lot of violent crimes aren't reported. People are very explicit about what happened to them, and they got home and they decided, you know what? I don't report violent crimes because I don't think they're going to catch him. If they catch him, they won't do anything to him. And if they do catch him, the guy might come after me. The NCVS surveys are good for that, but essentially they are self-reporting as well, right? And we already did a big podcast on self-reporting, how unreliable it is, especially when it comes to drug use. Very few people want to admit honestly about their drug use, but when they talk about it. But when you go into a place where they actually test you, then you can test who's telling the truth and who's not. Black people lie about their drug use 6 times more often than white people. And they even say, Journal of Addictive Behaviors, they even say the biggest indicator for denial, deceit, delusion, really just deceit, on a drug test, a self-reported drug test, is whether the person is black. And so those links work. I put those links in a story I did yesterday talking about our buddy Van Jones. Those links work. They are live over at AmericanThinker.com or in my books. But let's get to the first sentence, because the first sentence is what my lawyer, and every other lawyer in America likes to call actionable. See, what Tim Wise was out going to all these seminars on how to prove white people are racist. I was taking seminars on things like what is liable, what's actionable, what's not, because I knew I was going to be doing tough stories. I needed to know what the limits were, and if I wanted to cross those limits, what I needed to take with me, what level of proof, what level of documentation. Flaherty's a fraud. His work's unverifiable. Well, here, if you guys read my books, especially, that's what he's talking about. The books are two things. They're stories where I do links to stories and I reproduce stories. And I say, listen, by the way, we're going to do one really quickly here on Virginia Beach. Big news in Virginia Beach. I can't wait to get to it. And so what we do in the books is I'll say, okay, look, the reporter said this in Virginia Beach, but this is what happened, really happened. Notice the big gulf. They never mentioned that the central organizing feature of everybody there was black. Here's what happened, and here they were black. Okay, period. So we tell the truth behind these stories, and every once in a while, like in the Virginia Beach story, I got a letter from a family who lives in Virginia Beach, and he kind of broke down the history of this large-scale rolling episode of black mob violence that comes to Virginia Beach once a year. The reporters call it College Beach Weekend. People who go there know it as Black Beach Weekend. Black College Beach Weekend. We'll talk to that in a minute. So this letter really speaks to that. And when somebody sends me a letter about their personal experience with black violence, sometimes they ask me not to use their name. But most of the time, if they want to use their name, I will talk them out of it. I don't think anybody I come across people I expect to know better. Okay, I'm thinking of True to Roof right now, our big friend True to Roof. I have to talk people like True to Roof off the ledge. I mean, he wants to go in there. He wants me to use his name, where he works. He has a big position in a big company. He's totally unhappy with this whole business. And he goes, I don't care if you use my name, use it. I want you to use it. Got teachers telling me this, cops telling me this. No. Whatever else they know about this, about the prevalence and denial, deceit, delusion surrounding black violence, black crime, black on white violence, black dysfunction, whatever they know, what they don't know, what I have direct experience with, is how mean-spirited, small-minded, mean, petty, and dangerous these people, these liberals, the enemies that we are facing with every day. So when I call them enemies, those are the people that will go in and try to get you fired. They'll dox you. They'll tell people where you live. Oh, guess what? I tell people where I live anyway. Nobody comes here. I wonder why. Different story, different day. But, if you got a house full of kids, you don't want to get fired over this. You don't want people coming to your house over this. So I talk people off the ledge. So when you retire, your kids are out of the house. You can do whatever you want to do. And I love talking to retired cops. But even the retired cops, the guys that were kind of eager and anxious to start telling their stories here, they're still on the end of they feel like they're on the end of a short but long and thin leash. Their pension. But anyway, we do not depend on like anonymous sources to break stories. What we do is if we have a letter from somebody, if say that story of Virginia Beach, we'll use a letter to amplify what we already know about went on there. What we don't do is like 2 or 3 years ago, I got this call from a guy in Bridgeport, former cop in Bridgeport, Connecticut. Colin, there's been a huge scandal in Bridgeport. Somebody was putting letters in the black cop's mailbox with racial epithets saying, go home, end bomb, we don't want you here, this and that and this and that, really nasty business, threatening the end bomb cops, telling them to get out of there, the whole thing. You can picture it was, right? And apparently there were several of these. A week after it came out, the guy called me and he goes, listen, that happened, it's been in the news, check it out. Well, they already know who did it. They already know it's a fake. It's a fraud. The black cops did it. Okay, so that's one guy. I didn't know this guy. I wasn't going to do the story saying, based on one guy, the whole thing's a fraud, because I know nobody in Bridgeport was going to be working on that story. So I thought, you know what? I'm just going to let this play out. Because for me to go break that story, it would have taken weeks. I would have had to gone up there, knock on doors, make phone calls, hundreds of calls, just get past all the resistance. I would have had to find that one person who knew the one thing that opened up the whole thing. That's what I did when I was a full-time reporter. I would break news stories. The story that got the guy out of prison, Kelvin Wiley, that's how that started. One little thing, one little letter. But when you do the investigative reporter thing, you're drilling a lot of dry holes. So you have to walk away from a lot of stories. But I started drilling a hole in that one, and everything started unraveling. It took a month. That means a month I wasn't doing anything else. I can't walk away from this platform for a month because achieving our goals means me producing a lot of stuff every day. Because the level of denial, deceit, and delusion is so enormous, we have to produce material every day to chip away at it. So when Tim Wise comes out and he starts making these allegations about the world, about white racism and black victimization all over the country in high schools, colleges. On the way out the door, they toss some pennies, they toss some ducats in his hand. Our people got to be ready to fight that, and that's what they were doing here. And so to Tim Wise, I say, when I look at my last book, especially, Don't Make the Black Kids Angry, and I'm working to get that back in print. Hold on. You can still find it on eBay. I don't get any ducats from it, but go ahead. But that'll be out. That'll be back out soon. But when I think of that book, Don't Make the Black Kids Angry, there's one sentence in that book that had I had a chance to rewrite it, I would have changed it. I think there's a sentence I was talking about. We've done a lot of stories, a lot of material in Don't Make the Black Kids Angry about violence against teachers, black violence against teachers. So many letters from teachers, so many stories all over the country in black schools, white teachers being assaulted every damn day. Baltimore schools, 4 teachers assaulted every day. Baltimore schools, 4 a day. Don't forget that, 4 a day. Man, I knew that for a year before. Every time I heard that myself say that, I would go, it can't be 4 a day. It has to be 4 a week, 4 a month, right? I went back, checked the CBS story. They did a big story, violence in schools on teacher. They interviewed all these teachers with PTSD, these white teachers. They go, yeah, 4 a day. So anyway, I'm doing the same story out of St. Louis. The teachers are like getting assaulted. Bad business, everything is just as bad as you can imagine in the chocolate schools of St. Louis. And most of the schools in St. Louis are chocolate schools. So I read this one article and they gave a number. It said, I thought the number said 40% of new teachers, and new teachers means basically young white women just out of teachers college. Young white women with a lot of student debt, and the student federal, your student loan you got to repay. And if you work there for 4 years, for the next 6 years, if you work in an underserved, air quotes, black school, you do 4 years there, that'll help you repay a significant part of your student loan. So those are the stakes. You get a nice job out of college, helping open up young minds, get a bunch of money to help pay off your student loans. Something like 40%. I wrote in my book, I don't have it in front of me, 40% of the new teachers quit within like 2 months. So when I went back, when I reread that, I said, man, that sounds like a lot. So I tried to find it. I couldn't find that number. All I heard was, and I wrote off to the schools. They never got back to me. But what I know for sure is that a lot of new teachers don't survive the first year. It's so bad. When you're a teacher, you sign a contract. It is so bad. St. Louis is taking their teachers to court because they won't go back to school. They quit. They won't go back to schools in St. Louis because it's too dangerous, too chaotic. Every day is like one new day in hell. So that's the one line I would change, and I would just make it a little more vague. But the fact is, these schools are hell. So Tim Wise, here's a challenge. You send me a story in my book that isn't true. Tell me something in the book that isn't true. That's all I ask. And then we'll figure out a way to bet on it. You tell me the story, we'll bet. Okay? that way I can actually make some money on this rather than hiring my lawyer to come ask you to do the same damn thing in court. Then he gets all the money and it'll take a couple years. I like my lawyer. His name's Mark. He's a great golfer, but he can't putt. So I'm into his pocket more than he's into my pocket. Or maybe that's just the thing, what you do when you play golf with your clients. My father-in-law was a Democratic member of Congress for 18 years, and his big buddy in Congress was Claude Pepper. I think Claude was a senator from Florida. Then he became a congressman. He was known for his very advanced years. They were big buddies. So my father-in-law and his chief assistant, my big buddy, and Claude and another lobbyist, they were out golfing one time, and this lobbyist was kicking the crap at everybody. When you got golf, you play for money, whether it's somebody's going to win or lose in those games, 20, 30, 50 bucks, 60. Keeps it interesting. It's not a lot of money. But the lobbyist was winning all the money. So at the end of the day, they're changing the money, and my father-in-law goes, yeah, you're a good golfer. Claude Pepper goes, yeah, but a lousy lobbyist. So maybe my lawyer's just letting me, take all his money. I don't know. But he's eager to go on because you're basically not allowed to go, especially if you're like a guy like Tim Wise with a big audience, you're not allowed to go around calling people a fraud. That's actionable. So all you got to do, Tim, is just got to do is show me. I mean, believe me, when we do stuff here, I get 1,000 comments and emails a day, every day, from Twitter, Facebook, Mind, emails. Nobody wants to waste their time on a person that doesn't get their facts straight. And so when you look at all my YouTube videos, the people are posting them now, they're posting them again, they're getting an enormous. My YouTube presence is enormous because of the guys that are posting stuff over there. I think one's called the Great Dolomite, another one's called Unverified Truth. There's a couple of other ones over there too. So glad. Take my videos, post them everywhere. Post them on Twitter or Facebook. My blessing, great. Look at the comments. I mean, yeah, people come in and they go, Colin, you're a bad person. You're dividing the country. You're spreading hate. Okay, I get that. Nobody says I got the facts wrong. Nobody's saying, Colin, I was there. I was at Temple University that night. It wasn't 200 black people rampaging through the college and beating up white kids. That was a bunch of white kids rampaging through the college, beating up black kids who live in the neighborhood. Colin, how'd you get that wrong? So I don't get those wrong. I don't, if anything, I pull my punches around here. Just because I know I'm not giving anybody a little chink to a crack to get in to break apart what we're doing here. That's why we don't do causes and solutions. First of all, it's a deflection. Second of all, that gives everybody a chance it's a vulnerable place in what we're talking about. Plus, there's a billion people doing causes and solutions. We don't need to be the billionth plus one. And so we just do this. Basically, we just do this happened, and we point out the people who say it didn't happen. We point out the people who say white people do it too. We point at the people who say white people deserve it. I like Tim Wise's comments because he's the classic, right? On one level, he's saying, Colin, you're making crap up. This is not happening. Then in the same sentence, he'll go, this is why it's happening. It's not happening, but here's why it's happening. Because of the war on drugs. So we broke down that fantasy world. So here's the bet. Tim Wise, get my lawyer off my butt, will you? He talks too much during the damn round anyway, especially when I'm swinging. Show me where I'm wrong. Go ahead. The damn book it's got 950 footnotes. It's got 450 pages, thousands of videos, hundreds of articles, over 1,000 talk radio interviews, TV shows, podcasts. Show me one thing I said that was factually incorrect. Go ahead. And then we'll bet on it. Come on, Tim. last night people were hammering him. They were just saying the same thing I'm saying here right now, right? He goes, man, I'm not going to engage with you. I've got 25 years of experience in this. Yeah, well, Tom, if that's the gauge, Thomas Sowell and Walter Williams, they have twice as much as you do. And both of those say you're wrong and they say I'm right. So it's not really about like our level of experience. It's about our insight and level of expertise and being able to figure out what is right and wrong. Before you figure out what is right and wrong, you have to figure out what is true and false. So a guy like Tim Wise, he's all about good and bad. And he kind of ignores the true and false part. But the true and false part is the tricky part. What is happening? Reporters are just really bad at true and false these days. According to Tim Wise, black people are relentless victims of relentless white racism all the time, everywhere. That explains everything. Tim Wise is an expert with 25 years of experience, and he actually knows what the initials NCVS means, and that is quite impressive. I looked at his, he graduated from Tulane. He has a degree in political science. He had another degree in Latin American studies or something, which means basically he went through college without doing any arithmetic. Good old Colin, of course, went through college studying statistics, linear algebra, advanced calculus, all this stuff that's, forecasting, linear algebra. I mean, it's nasty business. But I always knew, and I went to college. I went back after a couple of years of being out of college. I knew how to read and write, so I didn't need to go to college to learn how to read and write. I knew I could do that. So I figured, why don't I pick up a skill? The numbers. Something I didn't know. So after I got over my initial fright, got into it, and I did very well at it. And so Tim, he's sitting there bragging about, I know the numbers. I talk about this in my essays. All right, Tim. So if you guys see Tim on Facebook or Twitter, at Twitter, he's Tim Jacob Wise on Twitter. Tell him about this challenge. Tell him to put up or shut up. He won't shut up. There's no chance of that. But he'll probably try to big time you. Like he tried to big time some of the people last night. Of course, they didn't buy it because our people here are smart. They know what's true and false. They know when someone's trying to BS them. They saw Tim Wise coming from a mile away. Show us, Tim. Don't just talk about it. Show us. Show us all this white racism and black victimization. Oh, yeah. And you're not allowed to say, yeah, I went to the store and I saw this woman behind the counter and I know she was a racist. When you talk about critical race theory, which is, real white racism, relentless black victimization, that's all it is. Explains everything. Black people in the books, if you read the books about them, black people are encouraged to tell their stories of racism because everybody knows the colleges are controlled by white racists that don't let this information get out, when of course the exact opposite is true. But in telling their stories, the stories go like something like this. I walked into a beauty salon the other day and they gave me a funny look like, what are you doing in here? You're a black woman. And I asked them to do my nails and I looked at them and I knew they gave me a funny look. They didn't know how to do a black woman's nails. And so take out the word salon, put in Pizza Hut or McDonald's, any number of restaurants, any number of public places, schools and colleges. And black people are reading white people's minds and imputing all this white racism to people who are, might not even know they exist. And so Tim, that's Tim's game. That's the game of him and his buddies. That's not what we do here. We do deal in facts. And we do deal in stories, personal stories of facts. When people write me I encourage people to write me these letters of their own personal experience, often in schools, often at work, often something very recent with them or their relatives. I said, listen, just tell me what happened. I don't need the big picture. I need you to tell me what happened. So don't explain it. Just tell me what happened. Tell me what the teacher said, your parents said. Tell me what the cop said. Tell me how everybody in your neighborhood reacted to this. But just tell me what happened. That's all. Joe Friday, just the facts, ma'am. So that's the form I hope these things take. And if you guys have a story, send it to me, Colin@colinflaherty.com. I'm compiling these for a book that's going to freak out Tim Wise. I don't really spend a lot of time worrying about Tim Wise or his counterpart, Sean King. I just don't. I mean, I kind of get what they are, and they're both about the same thing. White racism, relentless victimization. Sean King takes it to a new level. He's always buying these stories. As soon as they come across the wire, somebody in Louisiana decided that, this chick was brutalized and raped by a cop. Sean King gets on his high horse for the Daily News in New York or his Twitter stream or wherever he is, and he's talking about it as if it's fact. He's been involved in like 3 of them in the last year. Real nasty businesses are just out and out. Didn't even take long either. He's sitting there banging his drum. White racism people again. Sandra Bland again. Cops released the videotape. Oh man, I don't know why that chick wanted to tell me to lie. So if people want to know, by the way, why newspapers are going out of business, one of the papers used to be one of the biggest in the country is shrinking. Like the snow that's falling out of my window now. Tomorrow it'll all be gone. It's like that. The New York Daily News. Sean King writes for that newspaper under the banner that he's a black person writing about black problems. There's nobody in America that thinks he's black unless you're mentally ill. The dude is white. He's whiter than the snow I'm sitting on my car out there. And yet the editors of the New York Daily News look at his copy and he goes, yeah, you know what? I think it's a really good idea to have a white guy pretending that he's a black guy to write stories for us. He'll be very credible. Really? That's the way you roll? And I mean, so Tim Wise, to his credit, all he does is go around the country and talk to colleges. And they gave him a lot of money for doing that. Good for him. And he just, nobody ever gets fired for going into a college saying white people suck and they're big fat racists. Nobody gets fired for that. You get congratulated for figuring that out. But good old Colin steps foot on your campus like I did down at Atlantic College outside of Atlantic City last year. You walk in there and go, listen, you guys, this is the greatest lie of our generation, the greatest hoax of our lifetime, black victimization and white racism. Here's why. Bam, bam, boom. Here are the stories that happened here recently. Sprinkle a few numbers on them. So you guys all have your smartphones out there. Start looking now. Give me some white examples of this. Had a couple of the ugly ladies gave me a hard time, and they got up and walked out of class. I said, hey, you got, why don't you stay and tell me where I'm wrong? I don't like what you're saying. Okay, that's all good. So they took off. They were going to bring me back like once a month. The audiences were getting bigger, right, on my classes. They were going to bring me back like once a month. I was disinvited, but I am told a guy who supports 9/11, the 9/11 bombers, an imam out of New York, he's a regular feature on the campus. Boy, the campus business is good. If you're a writer, you got to get into that speaking circuit. So many colleges so desperate for somebody from, who's got a book behind his name to come and tell your kids how much white people suck. Tim Wise, case in point. Then you go to these campuses. Next thing you know, you meet the professors. The professors go, hey, Tim, would you mind if I assign this book to my students next quarter? I mean, I only have 500 of them and, that can read it, but I'm sure that's just too small of an order for you, but heck, I'd be happy to do it. Yeah, Tim's going, 500. That's great. 500 here, 500 there, 500 there. If somebody pops in an order for 500 of your books from Amazon, that's going to pop it up the bestseller list in a big hurry. Okay, so I'm sorry I went on too long about this Tim Wise thing. But it really kind of, when somebody kind of hits on your credibility, that's where you have to defend it. So there's the challenge, Tim. Boom. Let's bet on it. Bet on it. Boy, I'm kind of sorry the Tim Wise thing came up. We had to do that first because I really, 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 really wanted to get into this one. So does anybody know Pherell? Well, of course you do. Pherell Williams. Pherell Williams. He's the big, well, he's known for his song, Happy. Well, let's hear his song.
It might seem crazy what I'm about to say.
Just a little bit of it. So he's known for that big hit song. It was in a movie, Despicable Me 2, I think, and huge song. It was one of those it songs, for the summer. But really, I think where this guy really made a success out of himself is not being a performer himself, but he's a producer. He's the one who creates the sound for these other guys that are out there. I think that's the secret of the music business now. You find a producer who can make your sound, help you write songs. He's the one who it's really a producer-driven business. And by the way, if you give your producer a hard time, all of a sudden, some of the tapes you've made in studio, they're going to leak. And people are going to hear what your voice really sounds like before your producer puts something called auto-tune on it, and they have about 1 million ways of sweetening up a very ordinary voice. So if you hire Pherell Williams, be nice to him. All right, let's get back to I'm excited by Pherell's story. So the headline for the Pherell story is, first 3-day Pherell Williams Festival planned for College Beach weekend in Virginia Beach. The city is moving forward on plans for a 3-day festival in April pitched by Pherell Williams that will feature nearly 25 national acts. Listen, he's the kind of guy that can make this happen. This is from the local paper. It would be the first time that Virginia Beach organizes events for College Beach weekend. Oh yeah, by the way, we're going to get into this in a minute, but nobody calls it College Beach weekend. It's Black College Beach weekend. Last year, a task force made up of community leaders and business owners recommended that the city organize programming for a weekend that draws more than 30,000 people to the oceanfront, many of whom are young African Americans, according to the report. It's a big, hot chocolate mess down there in Virginia Beach. We're going to learn all about that. I don't know. Does Pherell know this? So he's calling his festival Something in the Water. Something in the Water is planned for April 26 to 28. Coming up, city manager has confirmed. Pherell, who grew up in Virginia Beach, has said he envisions yearly gatherings that become more like established music events around the country. Now, I'm just telling you, you and I are hearing this. If you've never heard of this Virginia Beach thing, you're just hearing it going, okay, hey, what's up, Colin? Why are you so excited about this? If you live in Virginia Beach, if you own a business in Virginia Beach, no, you're not saying, oh man, I'm going to make $1 million now. No, you're saying, how am I going to escape this tidal wave of violence, destruction, and mayhem that you're going to learn about in a minute? Let's get through this plan first. City officials are describing the event as a transition year as the festival becomes the primary social programming for College Beach weekend. Over the past 5 years, way longer than that, the resort has been flooded with students who want to unwind before exam week. I mean, you know what? I've kept hearing that never fails to strike me. You unwind before exam week. You unwind before the big event. Hey, we got exams next week, Colin. A week from now, what are you up to? I'm cramming. You gonna come over and do some studying with me? Nah, I'm gonna unwind, man. I'm gonna go to the beach, get high, attack police, drink some beer, destroy hotel rooms. It's gonna be a blast. Come on. What about the exams? F the exams. Just like we're gonna say F the police. F the police. Yeah, anyway. Sorry. I'm gonna unwind. No, you unwind after exams. Capiche? They flooded with students who want to unwind before exam week. Without any city-sanctioned events, crowds have gathered on Atlantic Avenue after the sun has set. Several people have been shot and stabbed over the past several years. In October, Pherell pitched the festival idea to city officials who embraced it. Pherell, he said he wanted to provide a multicultural experience with food, art, fashion, music. Concerts will be held here, there, everywhere. They're going to release the names of the people pretty soon. Da-ba-da-da-ba-ba. Okay, now we get to the bottom of the article where they're starting to hint, well, maybe all is not well in Denmark. Logistic planning between the police and festival organizers has been underway. Crowd control is the number one safety issue, according to the city. Private security will be brought in. Gun searches will be enforced in private, permitted areas. Traffic plans include a parking shuttle, trolley service, and bike valet. Concerts on the beach, basketball tournaments, art and fitness programs are some of the planned events. One festival aspect includes a partnership with public schools. Community members will be able to help grow the size of the existing community garden at SeaTac Elementary. Local high school and college students will also participate by creating public art throughout the resort area with guidance from New Orleans visual artist Brandon B. Mike Odom. Louisa Strayhorn, a lovely lady and a former city councilwoman who led the task force last year, says she's excited about the festival. Okay. That's the official story on the festival. Did you get the hint in there that something was, they're basically saying, well, we don't want to be nervous Nellies here. We don't want to let the world know what really happens in Virginia Beach, because if people knew that, they wouldn't take their families within 100 miles of that area all year round. Why don't we do a little refresher? Just one story, one weekend, Black College Beach weekend a couple of years ago. Why don't we run through some of the audio on that?
Guns, knives, fights, complete chaos. Scenes like this are what people witnessed last night at the Virginia Beach oceanfront. Good evening, everyone. I'm Erica Greenway. There was heavy police presence at the oceanfront last night, and some would say it was for good reason. News Channel 3's Marissa Jastic is live at the beach with the story new at 6:30. Well, this time yesterday, thousands of people, many of them college students, packed the streets here at the oceanfront. And dispatch told us last night that extra police were down here patrolling because of the crowds. And some businesses we spoke to today say they had to close their doors early because of all the violence. Oceanfront late last night into this morning. Police say around 11 and 4 robberies, all at the oceanfront late last night into this morning. Police say around 11:30 a man was shot in the leg at the 2000 block of Atlantic Avenue. 2.5 hours later, police say a man was shot in the chest while sitting in his car. And 15 minutes after that, a man was shot in the face at 27th and Atlantic. Police say all were non-life-threatening injuries and no one has been arrested for the shootings. But the violence did not stop there. A man stabbed in the back and neck, a woman hit with a glass bottle, and a man assaulted in a McDonald's parking lot, just to name a few more incidents. The mayhem coincided with College Beach weekend, bringing thousands of students down to the oceanfront before finals and graduation. The website dmvsthemove.com advertised College Beach weekend hotel deals, events, and parties at oceanfront clubs, offering special rates for those in sororities and fraternities. Erica Hammond, who goes to Norfolk State, helped promote the event. She says it happens every year, but this year, social media helped get the word to students all over the country.
This year we had a lot of people from out of state come, so that's the difference. It was people from all over, from Miami, Texas, Delaware, all over.
Now, police are not saying anything about charges or arrests from last night or whether college students were involved.
And, I actually put in a Freedom of Information Act request for 911 tapes in Virginia Beach. And there's two ways to do this. When you do Freedom of Information Act requests, most of the time, it's kind of a bluff, to tell you the truth. So you have to write your request in a way that makes it sound like there's a big law firm behind me, and you have to use certain language that make it seem like you really know what's going on. So it goes something like this. Dear Sir or Madam, please consider this a formal request under local, state, and national Freedom of Information Act request for the following information. Blah, blah, blah. I understand I have 10 days. I understand you have 10 days to respond to this request. I understand I will be responsible for all reasonable copy costs. So my request was, hey, I want to hear I want to hear the whole damn thing, all the 911 calls that night, when black people had an enormous riot in Virginia Beach. I know that doesn't narrow it down much, but we'll get to it. That night you just heard about on that tape there. So they came back at me and they said, well, we can't give you every video, every 911 call, because some of them are, still in active litigation, criminal cases. Well, that meant all the good ones were gone. They were going to take out all the good ones. So they sent me, I don't know, they sent me like 3 or 4 hours worth of 911 calls on video, on a CD disc. So I would listen to them, and every call, there was like one real nasty bit of business, but a lot of stuff around it. So I'm not going to subject you to a lot of that, but why don't we just hear a little bit of two calls to kind of get the flavor of what was happening on the 911 system that night.
Virginia Beach 911, where is the emergency?
I'm at 16th and Pacific. There have been some shots or something going on right here. Can we get somebody over here immediately?
All right, and I just want to verify, you said you're at 16th Street and Pacific Avenue,
Yes.
Is that correct?
16th
You
Street.
fired off the shot?
No, but I just know everybody's been coming here running.
Okay. And do you know how many shots you heard?
At least 2.
Okay. And how long ago was that?
It just happened.
Okay.
I'm staying right put where I am. I'm not going out wandering around.
I understand. And did you see any suspicious vehicles drive off fast or anything like that?
You just got, it's like gangs around here. I mean, it's just,
Okay.
the clientele is not good.
All right, I understand.
I mean, this is all residents right here, so.
Right. Okay, yeah, I'll go ahead and let them.
Just a bunch of, there's been a huge crowd of kind of ghetto people down here the past 2 nights. They're in that garage. I witnessed a drug deal. They're urinating on cars, breaking bottles.
You witnessed this tonight?
This is tonight. I'm the actual doorman for the hotel, so I don't go often into the garage.
Mm-hmm.
But it got a little bit busy, and I drove a car up there, and I was just looking at all these people. Who knows if they're trying to, break into cars, but they were definitely at least urinating on them.
Okay. All right, so we've got a large crowd. Is it males, females, white, black?
Males, females, black, African American.
Okay.
Yeah, they've been concentrated in this area all day, just kind of raising somewhat of trouble. But I haven't seen many police officers down here.
And let me see, this came out of, why don't we go to the Encyclopedia, Black Mob Violence. The book that is filled with such terrible, terrible stuff you shouldn't be allowed to read or hear about, that Amazon took it down because it's too dangerous. You might ask any small children, old people, young people, gay people, straight people, Amish people, Eskimo people, kitties, puppies, turtles, and goldfish. You might want them to leave the room because they're going to be hearing stuff directly affecting them. So let's hear about Virginia Beach. Virginia Beach, I'm going to start a riot. And you can't stop it, say partygoers. Now here's a quote from Public Enemy. This was a huge album. Public Enemy, F the Police, those guys. I can't sing it, but I'll just tell you the lyrics. They made Virginia Beach famous. Places with racist faces. Just an example of one of many cases. The Greek weekend speech, I speak from a lesson learned in Virginia Beach. I don't smile in the line of fire. I go wild in. That's from called Welcome to the Terror Dome, Public Enemy, Fear of a Black Planet. That was a song about how black people tried to destroy Virginia Beach in 1989. It was huge. So don't we just read a little bit of this chapter? Reporters had trouble describing the epic racial violence and hostility that 40,000 black people brought to Virginia Beach in April of 2013. So let's start here. Black College Beach Week was organized by black people, for black people, promoted by black people on black radio stations at black colleges. They sent buses to pick up members of black fraternities and sororities, and they brought them all to Virginia Beach, and they raised holy, violent, unapologetic, race-conscious hell. Or as we just played the clip I'm going to talk about here, or as WTKR-TV described, guns, knives, fights, complete chaos. Much of it was on video. Even so, every step of the way, local politicos and media types tried to minimize and deny the violence and who was responsible. Let's get a snapshot of what this rolling race riot really looked like. The family of Anis Hermache owns a restaurant in Virginia Beach. He posted a video on his Facebook page that captured some of the black mob violence when dozens of people stormed his business. Quote, "These guys destroyed my family's store. They beat a kid senseless and put my dad's life in danger," said Hermache. "When I called the cops, not one person showed up." Note for the rest of the book. You have probably already figured this out, but teens equals black people of varying ages, pre and post-teen as well. Nancy Rodeo owns the Upper Deck restaurant and lounge. They got her too. When the local news found Rodeo, the black news anchor started the story by describing the hyper-violence as rowdy. Then she tossed it to one of her field reporters. Her name was Ann McNamara. She took it a bit more seriously. Quote, "The business owners found themselves held hostage in their own storefronts," said McNamara, "and in some cases they actually got hurt." Now we meet Rodeo. Quote, "She was assaulted by an unruly group of girls," said McNamara ever so carefully. Now in this book I was putting QR codes, right? You guys might know this. QR codes, and the QR code would lead you to the video. All you gotta do is get your smartphone out, click, click, boom, you're watching my YouTube channel. About a couple months after this book came out, YouTube took the whole all my videos down. So the QR codes look cool. We were the first ones to do it. But those videos are not on YouTube. I still have them. They're just not on YouTube. So let's go back to the book. Putting aside the, quote, complexities of race, unquote, that people in Rochester love to bleed about, here is a simple version of what happened. The black people did not want to leave the restaurant. They did not want to pay either. They did want to punch the 65-year-old Rodeo in the face. So that is what they did, giving her a black eye on video. I can still remember that tape. It's just a nice-looking older woman. She's trying to run a business. She's 65. She's not like one of these 300-pound chicks that run bars. No, she's a frail and elegant woman running a nice little business in Virginia Beach. She meets these black chicks and they beat the piss out of her. For one reason, two reasons. One, because she's white. Two, because they can. Quote, when I turned, the girl spit in my face, Rodeo said. That, quote, she then threw her drink at me. Then she hit me upside the head. Unquote. She had a cell phone in her hand, she would later add, only leaving when someone shouted, "The police are coming," even though they knew the police were not coming. Here's another story from Rick Kolivacek. He owns a surf shop in Virginia Beach. He told Wavy TV News he saw things get unbelievable and real ugly around 10 p.m. He heard gunshots, saw violence, and commended the police for doing a great job in spite of being overwhelmed by this ocean of criminal activity. Quote, "I experienced this back in 1989, and this was the same magnitude." This happened before? Question mark. That was news to most people, depending on local news for that information. More on the 1989 nightmare in a minute. Back to the current victims. Quote, "It was a nightmare. I'm surprised no one got killed down here," said George Smith, another business owner. He said college-age kids were out of control. "It was just so crazy," said bar owner Baldwin to the local ABC affiliate. "We actually had a fight break out in front of my business at the sandbar that the crowd busted in and broke my front window. That's $1,000 per window." How many stories of black mob violence that night do you want? Pick a number between 1 and 40,000. That's how many there are. Quote, I was scared to death, said Denise Gordon, a manager for the 18th Street Seafood Bar and Grill. Through all those incidents happened late at night, Gordon said she'd noticed rude, obnoxious behavior around her restaurant much of the day. Fearful, she closed the restaurant at 8 p.m., 2 hours earlier than usual for a Saturday. Gordon then said she called for security to help employees get to their cars after closing. Quote, it was so crazy, I don't even know how to describe it, she said. Without describing the violent visitors as black people, that is. Want to know how crazy it was? They closed the liquor stores. Kathy Grissom owns Pirates Paradise Mini Golf. I can see all these videos rolling in my head, Mr. Wise. Kathy Grissom owns Pirate Paradise Mini Golf. She spent the riot fixing up the walking wounded that collapsed in front of her business. You can see it on video. The next day, she watched speechless as her security video showed the same people breaking in and stealing more than a dozen bikes she rented to tourists. The people she helped came back and stole her rental bikes. On Fox 43 News, a black woman said mayhem and lawlessness at Beach Week is nothing to worry about. Quote, I think it's still fun, said Charisma Jackson. Quote, it happens when you get a lot of people together. This stuff happens everywhere you go. It's like that. Unquote. Black mob violence is normal. Funny how often I hear that. Funny how often no one disagrees. Loretta Liberté on Facebook also said this kind of racial violence is becoming a regular feature of life in Virginia Beach. My son was jumped a few months ago. 6 guys right down the block from this. They robbed him and kept kicking and beating him even after he was unconscious. He was in the hospital for a week and he had hemorrhaging on his brain. They haven't caught those punks either. City officials downplayed the violence for as long as they could, even after videos began flooding YouTube and Facebook. Quote, the events that transpired Saturday evening and into early Sunday morning at Virginia Beach oceanfront should in no way, shape, or form be compared to Greek Fest in 1989, said Mayor William Sessions. The disruption at the oceanfront was just that, a disruption. Oh, by the way, Greek Fest, there were no Greeks at Greek Fest, okay? Back to the book. People from Greece were rioting in 1989 in Virginia Beach? Well, no. More on that in a minute. The mayor even told one reporter that victims of violence and visitors it's just a question of being in the wrong place at the wrong time. The same thing happened to him once in Cancun. He said that, quote, that wasn't the right time for me to be there, said the mayor. Perhaps future visitors to Virginia Beach should call ahead, presumably to see if any riots are on the schedule. Some local reporters pitched in, and they did what they could do to minimize the violence while introducing a segment on the mayhem. Black anchor Don Roberts of WAVY reminded everyone that they really had no idea whether the students, quote unquote, were in fact responsible for the violence. Students equals black people. At least they did that weekend. You knew that, Don, but you wouldn't say it. That is a favorite technique of deniers like him. Ignore the evidence and say the evidence does not exist. Back. Reporters did their damnedest to pretend the crowd just happened to be black. And this kind of racial violence had never happened before in their comfortable beach town before. Not even during the black college student riot called Greek Fest in 1989. But locals knew city officials and reporters were wrong on all counts, and readers were not buying it. Daniel Johnson was one of the dozens eager to talk about the widespread chaos, danger, thefts, and violence during College Beach Week, which was supposed to be a time when black students could blow off some steam before finals. As the week after the riot wore on, more and more locals began to reveal how bad it really was. Far different than the spot of bother narrative the local media was spinning, said Gigi at WND.com. I was in Virginia Beach that very night, and I can tell you it was incredibly frightening. There was definitely a mob mentality. Kids were jumping on moving vehicles, walking through 4 lanes of traffic. You could just feel this building insanity. I had one car come flying at my vehicle, turn sideways, and almost hit me. I'm not really doing it justice by describing it here. I felt very unsafe. I and my money will never return to Virginia Beach because of that craziness and the intimidating people. Others took to Facebook and the local news sites to say what the local reporters could not or would not. Quote, because it was a group of young black college people, everyone is scared to say anything for fear of being called a racist, Johnson said in a post to a news story at the Virginian Pilot. Quote, it is what it is. These people come to the beach and do everything in their power to intimidate the local and visiting white people at the beach. Rude, disrespectful, dirty, violent. They come here and treat our beach like a toilet. Police reported 900 emergency calls to 911 Saturday night. Not the 325 widely reported, involving at least 3 shootings, 3 stabbings, and 3 robberies. I listened to 6 hours worth of them. All during a 6-hour period that they know of. One reader at WND said there were many more. Quote, the reported crimes of 3 shootings, stabbings, and robberies are just a sample size of what went on this weekend. The police were so overwhelmed, emergency calls were not getting through, and even calls of shots fired were not responded to. The major artery to the resort area was even closed as the interstate to there was shut down from miles away. All during a 6-hour period that they know of. One reader at WND said there were many more. This is what she said. They reported crimes of 3 shootings, stabbings, and robberies are just a sample size of what went on this weekend. The police were so overwhelmed, emergency calls were not getting through, and even calls of shots fired were not responded to. The major artery to the resort was even closed as the interstate to there was shut down from miles away for hours. Conscious of the paper's history of deleting comments that refer to race, Mark Morrell testified anyway. PSA, he says, public service announcement. There were no persons of any other race on the videos perpetrating those crimes. None. Not stealing the bikes, or not starting the brawls, or any other illegal crazy action. Have I mentioned any race at all? No, because you know exactly what I'm talking about. I most certainly don't have to. You can identify me all you want. I'm not scared. I don't hide behind my screen or my newspaper. There is an elephant in the room. Pilot, that's the name of the newspaper. What are you going to do about it? In a community meeting a week later, 700 locals let loose. They talked about unreported violence, racial slurs, war zones, gunshots, hotel havoc, boardwalk brawls, cowardly media happening a long time, people dining and dashing and laughing. Not just this weekend, other weekends too. White cops can't handle the black situation. People were beat. Nobody was arrested, and dope. Lots and lots of dope smoking. But above all, everyone was saying, how did we let this happen to us? One after another for hours. They were mostly talking to themselves and reporters. The mayors and members of the city council were no-shows after trying to convince the meeting organizers to cancel the event to avoid bad publicity. That is, for anyone foolish enough to tell the truth. Oh, and yeah, by the way, the video, that's gone. Of the meeting, that is. The riot videos are not gone. Yeah, the video was like 3 or 4 hours. I caught it on public access. And when I first started doing this, I wasn't aggressive about capturing video as I am now. Now it's like if I see it, no matter what, I'm capturing it right away because it disappears, just like this one disappeared. 700 people from Virginia Beach. This is not in the book. 700 people from Virginia Beach in a room telling the truth about what happened that night. Back to the book. Kevin Darden told the Virginian Pilot, that's the local paper there, that anyone who notices that all the lawbreakers were black is racist. Quote, being a black male, I am insulted reading your comments because they are very degrading and assumes that white kids are not capable of doing such things. Well, let me tell you, all you have to do is come to Ocean View any day of the week and see for yourself how wrong you are. Unquote. Yeah, I get that a lot, but never with videos or links. even one. I have a few we'll see later on. Spoiler alert, white riots are really tepid. This is not a book of history or sociology or Colin Flaherty's patented instant solutions to the problem of racial violence. This is a record of what is happening right now. Even so, some of the old-timers in Virginia Beach thought it was worth remembering the last time a large crowd of black college students came to town bent on mass destruction. Well, I shouldn't have said last time, the biggest time. It was 1989. Back then they called it Greek Week. One of dozens of such gatherings of black college fraternities and sororities up and down the East Coast over a several-year period, all leaving crime, trash, destruction, and excuses in their wake. All of them. 20 years after the fact, a reporter suddenly discovered Greek Week was really a multi-ethnic fun fest that some people mistakenly thought was some kind of race riot. Quote, way too many people showed up for the end of the summer celebration in Virginia Beach during the 1989 Labor Day weekend. Yes, many were black fraternity members, hence the Greek and Greek Fest. But there were lots of non-students as well. People just wanted to drink, flirt, and hang out. I'm convinced there had to be a few Renaissance fair actors in the mix, and maybe some flamboyant tap dance instructors. End of quote. Isn't that a cute lie? But it's funny. I mean, these people imagine things, and they don't think people like me are going to say, hey, instead of imagining it, can you give me an example of somebody that will back up what you just said? That 20 years, 1989, there really were white kids rioting during this riot. Guess that's unreasonable. Back to the book. Get rid of the editorial comments, Colin. During that time, no one questioned or poked fun at whether 50 to 100,000 black people were creating incredible levels of mayhem by destroying 100 shops, fighting cops, breaking the law. They killed a horse. They threw a huge brick at a horse's head. All the while blasting out the two big hits of that summer, Fuck the Police and Fight the Power from Spike Lee movie soundtrack Do the Right Thing. Afterwards, most of the media discussion centered on how the people of Virginia Beach must be racists to have caused such an outburst. Many of the students blamed the locals for not making them feel more welcome. If you're playing a drinking game at home, please do not guzzle whenever you hear someone say they committed violence because the people who lived there did not make them feel welcome. You will be way too drunk to finish this chapter. There are so many contemporary accounts of Greek Fest. This one from a police blog. All this is footnoted, by the way. Sorry, Tim Wise. I was living in Virginia Beach when we had the riots. It started off as Greek Fest, whereby mostly black fraternities would come to the beach every Labor Day. Thousands of young college-age people would pack the beach oceanfront every year, mostly students from historically black colleges such as Norfolk State, Hampton, Howard, etc. The crowds got rowdier and larger every year. The year of the riots, the crowd was estimated at 100,000 people. Anyway, some drunken student fell from a balcony, and when the ambulance responded, a crowd that formed began throwing rocks, bottles, and other debris at the ambulance attendants. The crowds began throwing rocks through store windows and looting the stores. Cars would pull up and everyone would jump out and do a smash and grab. That's the end of the count from the cop. While reporters try to convince us that Greek Week 1989 was really a misremembered collection of rowdy belly dancers, other residents insist it really began in the years before. By 1988, large groups of black people were looting stores in the middle of the day, vandalizing hotel rooms, destroying property, and police took a hands-off approach. Everyone involved on the wrong end of this mayhem agrees on this. White racism caused it all. How about an eyewitness account? I'm not going to read that. That's in the book. This is a guy from who lived in Virginia Beach. His family was there. He worked at all the shops. So after I was writing about this, he sent me a letter about it. But this podcast has gone on way longer than I thought it was going to go on. Between Tim Wise of Virginia Beach So I'll leave I had a couple other things scheduled I wanted to talk about. I wanted to talk about some black on handicap violence that's been showing up a lot lately. I wanted to talk about, we talk about mass shootings here, how it's a black thing. 75% of people are mass shootings. What about the flip side of that? Instead of having one black guy shoot 7 people, what about when you have like 3, 4, 5 black people shooting one guy? That's equally strange. So we're going to talk about that, a couple of other things. But let's wrap up this Wise and Virginia Beach thing. Now, so there it is, Tim. This is what happened there. I'm not making any of this up. Tons and tons of footnotes, tons and tons of stuff still on Google, still on Facebook, still on the webs, the TV websites. Nobody's hiding anything there. Nobody's hiding it. They're bragging about it. Spike Lee was bragging about it. Ice Cube. He's the guy who helped write that song. Fuck the police. They brag about what happened in Virginia Beach. They see it as some kind of black empowerment where people were taking over the beach from all those racist faces in Virginia Beach. Because if you're racist, you pretty much deserve whatever happens to you. And how do I know you're a racist? Well, I could see the way you look at me. I could see the way you give me the fisheye when I ask you to pay in advance for your hotel room. I could see the way you talk to me with disrespect when you tell me that I'm not allowed to have 27 people in my room at one time smoking dope, drinking, and destroying the furniture. I could see when I'm I could see I could see why a bunch of black women would attack that old white lady because they didn't get the level of service they thought they were entitled to. I mean, that's what I do when I go to a restaurant. Maybe somebody doesn't come up to me and say, "Oh, hello, Mr. Flaherty. We haven't seen you here in 2 years." Yes, but we still remember. You like your steaks medium rare. Come on, sit down. Let me take your coat. Then you walk down to your seat. All the cooks and waiters and waitresses are going, "Hey, Colin, what's going on? How's your books going?" That kind of service, right? I mean, I guess that's what they were imagining they were going to get before they punched that white chick in the face, Tim Wise. Verified? Good Lord, this is all on video. Before video, what happened? We had guys like me, who I wasn't in this part of the racket then, but you had guys like me going, "Hey, yeah, it was really bad in Virginia Beach. There were 100,000 people in Virginia Beach. 100,000 black people trashing the town on a level you can't believe." That's on video now. So Tim Wise doesn't have the luxury of coming out and going, "That never happened, Colin." No, that was white kids did that. Does Pherell know any of this stuff about his hometown of Virginia Beach? He must. Maybe he wasn't around in '89 when they had the riot, but that riot long since became a part of legend. Thanks to Public Enemy and their songs. People would talk about it, what a great time it was, how we really showed them who owns this town. Laugh, laugh, laugh. It was a thing to be remembered and celebrated. No, not as a time when belly dancers came out, but at a time when black people went crazy in Virginia Beach. And it kept happening summer after summer after summer on some level or another. So what does Pherell think? He thinks he's going to roll into town with all of his national acts. Oh yeah, this is going to be a thing. This guy is enormous.
It might seem crazy what I'm about to say.
It's going to be a lot more than 30 or 40,000 people there. This is going to be a big deal. Sorry to predict the future. I don't normally like to do that. It's against the law in the state of New York. But I just don't see how this isn't a big deal. And so what's going to happen? Are he going to let people into the concerts without being wanded down for guns? What about all the other businesses in Virginia Beach? Are they going to have to hire extra security as well, just like you are going to have to hire extra security? What is everybody thinking? What are you thinking, Pherell, that all the stuff that happens at Black Beach Week in Miami Beach is not going to happen to you? Ditto for Black Bike Week in Myrtle Beach. Ditto for the Black College Beach Week here. That's not going to happen to you. You're smarter than everybody else who put these things together. all these enormous Black Beach weekends along the Gulf Coast of Florida, the Greek Fests, the Freakniks, all up and down the East Coast. You got the magic bullet. You're going to remind everybody, okay, this is put on by the brother, for the brothers. Let's show the world we can have nice things. Come on, everybody, be happy. Okay, let's see what happens, Pherell. So Tim, we're kind of closing Tim's world in. He can't really go to the number one excuse of the olden days, which is that didn't happen. Now there's only two left, which is white people do it too and white people deserve it. So Tim's kind of into full-throated on both of those. So don't forget, if you have a chance, you're on Twitter, go over and remind Tim his little fairy tales aren't being well received here. And we're only doing a tip of the iceberg. It's so many stories every day. Every day. So many stories. So many important stories, illuminating stories. Like, there's another story we'll have to put aside till tomorrow or the next day. A fantastically important story. So they're electing all these George Soros social justice warrior district attorneys, right? Philadelphia, St. Louis, Chicago, Boston, Baltimore, Washington, D.C., New York City, and lots of other places around the country. So the guy in Philly, his name's Larry Krasner. He might be the worst of them all. That's why he gets the most attention from places like Harvard Law School. They bring him up and pat him on the back, telling him what a great job he's doing because he's decriminalizing poverty. And so there's been all these high-profile cases in Philadelphia where these people are doing these really nasty things. Black people are doing these really nasty things, and they're just walking. They're getting away with lesser charges. We did a video on this. A guy takes a gun into an Asian shopkeeper's store. He's out there washing a car. The guy's got a rifle, a high-powered rifle. He's going to go in and rob it. The Asian shopkeeper, he sees what's happening. He confronts him. His family's in the store. He gets shot. I think he's crippled now. I don't think he can move anymore below the waist. That's his livelihood. Done. Permanently. This guy had a long record. They charged him with some crazy thing and they gave him some crazy sentence because of the charges, because that's all the DA wanted to do. That was I think he only got a couple years. And so the U.S. attorney up there, okay, we'll get into this, but the U.S. attorney, we'll do the video, we'll play the audio tomorrow. The U.S. attorney up there said, what? Then he realized it was a pattern of these things happening. And he goes, no, we are going to file federal charges on that guy because the district attorney is being irresponsible. All this concern for the victim, all this concern for the perpetrator, not an ounce of concern for the victim. Of course, the DA goes up there and goes, oh, well, we made a mistake in that one. We're really concerned about the victims. No, he's not. Doesn't give a damn. A bunch of these cases are happening. So let's keep an eye on that. I think that has to start happening in these other places too. I mean, it's weird. Like the DAs get in there, they swear they're going to uphold the law, right? First thing they do is say, okay, we're not going to enforce all these different laws, mostly because they're racist and they discriminate against black people, and we're just not going to do that. I mean, I thought that was the job of the city councils and the state legislatures. I mean, why don't they do it? Instead, we appoint a DA, and he's the one who decides which laws they're going to enforce, which ones they're not. Wow. We've been talking around here for a long time about how cops don't roll on shoplifting calls. They just don't. So if you have a store, a big store like a Vons or an Acme's, you have to, you got to have your own security there. A lot of times they'll hire a cop in uniform. Maybe that'll cut down on the people who pick up, a shopping cart full of groceries and run away. I mean, places like Victoria's Secret. Tons of videos, black women, 6, 7, 8, 10 black women go to a place, loot the place, in and out, 2-3 minutes, boom. The employees are instructed not to interfere. The insurance company does not want those employees getting shot. They don't want a $400,000 medical bill because you decided to stop somebody from stealing $4,000 worth of bras. Everybody knows that. So the cops just aren't rolling on shoplifting. These small stores, small neighborhood stores, going in, grab a beer, grab a six-pack, grab a case of beer, walk out. Nobody's going to stop you. Maybe they'll put you on video. Maybe they'll give it to the police. The DA goes, what? We don't have enough people to chase around somebody just because they stole a $50 case of beer. And now we got the chief of police of Houston. Somebody just sent me, a Houston cop just sent me this. Goes, Colin, look what our chief's sending around. It's a cop at one of these liberal colleges that hires liberal cops after they kind of get off the force. Guy wrote a big, long story about how, broken windows policing doesn't work. You know what Rudy Giuliani did in New York? He basically started busting people who were doing small crimes. All of a sudden, the big crimes started disappearing. The city got cleaner. And so liberals since then have been, reminding us, broken window policing doesn't work. No, doesn't work. Nothing works. The only thing works is for us to get rid of our race. The guy actually kind of says this in the article. At the end, he goes, no, the only thing that works is getting rid of these structural impediments to these people having nice lives. Structural means relentless white racism, causing relentless black victimization. That's Tim Wise's work. He's like Johnny Appleseed. He travels the country spreading these apple seeds of black victimization, white racism. Oh, man, I wrote this article for American Thinker saying, hey, people going to CPAC, please, you have to know what Van Jones is all about when he tells you about criminal justice reform. You have to know what it's all about. It's not giving people a second chance. It's not letting black people out of prison because white racism put them there. It kind of is more about that. But the underpinning is there are so many black people in prison just because of white racism. And I went through why they're there, why people say that, and I demolished every single reason. Check that article out in American Thinker. It's on Thursday's paper. Website, AmericanThinker.com. But then after I saw a little bit of his speech last night. No, I do not devour Van Jones speaking engagements, even at CPAC. But apparently he was received a slightly skeptical reception. But then he started reminding everybody there, it's like, hey, this is your issue. Republicans have been leading on this issue, and to me, that was the most subversive and dangerous thing he said during the whole thing. He was letting people in that room know, because a lot of people go to CPAC. A lot of young people go there. They're aware that that's where they make friends and contacts in the DC area, and that's how that's how you do it, right? You make friends, and friends help friends, and up you go together. It's all good. And so he's trying to convince everybody that even though you might be sitting there by yourself going, hey, I don't really believe this story of relentless white racism and black victimization, but he's trying to convince you that everybody else in the room disagrees with you. So all of a sudden you're going, well, okay, maybe I was wrong. Maybe there are a lot of black people in prison for no reason whatsoever other than white racism. It seems like everybody else in this room thinks that. Trump thinks that. You know what? I'm just going to go along with that. I've got other fish to fry. That was his hope. I don't know if he succeeded or not. I don't know if anybody challenged him before or after or not. Didn't sound like anybody did. If you were at CPAC, let me know. And if Van Jones got out of there with a lot of nice pats on the back and a lot of good fist pumps, let me know. If you got out of there with a lot of people shaking their head going, hey, Van, we understand what you're about. We understand. We understand this Tim Wise method of making everybody think white racism is to blame for all this black dysfunction. So let me know. Maybe let me know if it was one or the other. Curious how the liberals never invite conservative icons to their conventions. I wonder why that is. I think I know why that is. Because inviting real conservatives like an Ann Coulter to tell the truth, well, this is actually not Ann's strongest issue anymore. She kind of, every once in a while, she'll remind people, I love Ann Coulter, she reminds people that, listen, black people were victims of white racism for a long time of slavery, so we can give them special stuff. But I don't know why anybody wants to give special treatment to Mexicans coming across the border. No, we never did anything to them, so they don't deserve special treatment. But they just won't invite conservative icons to go to their thing, for the conservative can tell them what's up. Oh, by the way, inviting Flake and John Kasich and David Brooks and people like that, they are not conservative icons. They are people that go and wave the white flag of surrender. They're the ones going over there and telling them that conservatives are in disarray. They don't have any ideas. And then I used to be a real conservative. But now, the conservatives have left me. They say that, and liberals eat it up. So anyway, man, there's so much stuff to talk about. So many things to talk about. If you're hearing this on my web, I know a lot of people listen to this directly on my website. I've been having a lot of luck with the Stitcher app on my iPhone, because these things are different. They take longer to get your audio thing up and running. So if you just go to if you're on Apple, you go to the App Store. If you're Microsoft, you go to your App Store, whatever that is. You just put the word Stitcher in. It'll come up, app, download it, search Colin Flaherty. It'll come up, White Girl Bleed a Lot podcast. Just subscribe to it. Boom, it's there, right in your iPhone. You can listen to it in the privacy of your car, your headphones on, listen to it in your car radio, the whole thing, the whole time. You'll have a little privacy, so you'll know you're not going to make any black kids angry. I'll catch you next time.